Hello, welcome back to the Dr. Kirstin Show. I'm your host, Dr. Kirstin Lauritsen. Let's be real. We're going to jump right in today. High performance doesn't always mean pushing harder. It means really clearing what's draining your energy without you even realizing it. I have spoken a lot to high performers throughout my career, and I'm not just speaking to people. I used to speak, in the terms of athletics, right? High performance. Everybody wants to be able to perform at their absolute best, right? And there's even like a dream of being a high performer. Here, I'm not just talking to the people who have a particular, let's say, goal of being a high performer in athletics or anything else, although everything that we talk about here will apply to that. I'm also talking to the person, the woman who wants to be 100% at everything that you do. You want to be the best. You want to show up at your best most of the time, right? You want to be the best wife, the best spouse, the best partner, the best mom, the best um uh, business owner, or best in your job or career, whatever that looks like, right? Um that that person is wired differently. Okay? You're just are if that is like the thing, right? The driver of like, yeah, like I want to be and do my best. You are wired differently than many other people. There are reasons why you are the way that you are, and we talk about a lot of them here on this podcast, but and on the show, but there are reasons why you are the way that you are. And so, if any of this is like, okay, yes, this is me, and yes, I am tired and drained and fatigued, and I would like to know how to have more energy, this is the episode for you. Um, and if all of this resonates, you might also be feeling like you're running at 70% when you know you're built for more. You might be saying, I know I'm meant for more, but I just can't seem to get there. You might be feeling like you're doing all the right things, but you are still feeling exhausted and scattered, or maybe just off. And you just know there's more available for you, or that maybe in the past you had been operating at a certain level and you're just trying to get back there. I don't want to get distracted. That's a really good one. And it has so much to do with identity. But you might also be feeling like hitting a wall every time you try to scale or show up fully, or like maybe you are doing your typical like training workouts, things like that, and you are literally hitting a wall in those. That can be a sign of burnout. It can be a sign of fatigue, potentially even adrenal fatigue. It could be a sign of just really like nervous system dysregulation. It also can be a sign that the body, if you're an athlete, you are hitting a wall because at this point in time in your training season and cycle, your body has been able to mop up inflammation up until this point, and it has literally, it can't mop up the inflammation at the level, at which you're also training. And so some very specific things need to happen there in order to change that and send you back into an adaptation state. You also might be feeling like you're mistaking energy leaks for a lack of discipline or motivation. Maybe you're craving a lot of focus and presence, but you feel like you're constantly living in a background of like stress and just chaos, and like lots of things are just happening and it all feels really heavy. You might also be secretly wondering if your body is sabotaging you. I can tell you that it's not. It's actually protecting you. But if you've ever heard the term self-sabotage, I like to reframe that as it's just your body really just trying to protect you. If you've ever been or felt tired of trying harder when your system just wants to feel safe, if you felt stuck between knowing that you're capable and not understanding why you can't sustain it, this episode's for you. So, If any of those resonated, I'm sure you're perked up in listening. So, the one thing that I really wanted to start out with is that one of the questions that I get all the time, because people, especially in my realm of work, functional medicine, those kinds of realms, is that one of the things that they are so focused on is treating inflammation. That is like the number one thing that people go to, and they're like, if there's a problem in my body, it's because of inflammation. And so I need to do the things to reduce inflammation. So when it comes to fatigue, when it comes to energy, when it comes to feeling super, super drained, what do people do? They try brain fog, right? They try to figure out where is the inflammation coming from. And in many ways, that's what you've been taught to a way of thinking that you have been taught, right, is to start looking for the root. Where did it come from? Because the conversation around treating the surface level problem and just the symptoms, people know now that there's a lot more going underneath the surface, right? And there are a lot of people who don't want to treat the symptoms, right? They want to get to the root. They want to heal. They want to get better. They don't want to just take stuff to take stuff every single day. So, the question then that I usually get is like, okay, but like, what do I do? Right? To have more energy. What are the physical things that I need to do in order to have more energy? And this is also coming from the place of where likely, you may be the person who's just drinking more coffee, right? To treat the symptom. You might be trying to biohack, right? And looking at all of the different supplements and different lab tests that you can run, and starting to look at like genetic testing and all these fancy things that, yes, can be very helpful and move the needle in certain aspects, but at the same time, too, they can also be very distracting, and they can start to add up to a whole lot of things that you have to do in your day just to keep yourself going. Personally, I like to take a different approach, one that allows me to maintain a healthy foundation, but doesn't have me taking a million different supplements every day and having to be so strict with everything that I do. And I like a little flexibility, you know? So, and also, we want things that are going to move the needle. We want things that are going to move the needle. So the question that people ask me, right, is like, what did you do to have more energy? Especially like as a mom, what did you do to not be so burned out? What did you do to help with like nutrient depletion? What did you do to, perform well when you were an athlete? Like it's constantly this focus on what did I do? Or what do your clients do? How do you help people do these things and have more energy and be able to perform at their best at no matter what the role is that you're in right now? And there's a couple of things that I usually find come through in my response. Number one is that we stop looking at symptoms in your life or in your body as problems, and we start looking at them as indicators. Okay. So we start looking at what is the story that your body is telling? Because it is telling a story. Every symptom is a communication point. We just need to learn how to read what it is trying to tell you and what it's trying to say. Being able to listen and being able to actually, like, in some senses, decode what your brain is trying to tell you is a superhero tool that you can access and you can learn. And it doesn't necessarily require a lot of super fancy degrees and doctors and all of those things. It does take time to cultivate it for sure, but it is something that you can learn. Now, for those of you that are like, okay, this is not something to do, like you're not telling me what to eat and what to take. We're going to get there. But this is a really important perspective shift that you need to make, which is that your symptoms are not the problem. Okay. They are just your body trying to communicate with you. So when you make that shift, then we can start the breakthrough process of what is it that needs to shift? What blocks do we need to remove? What are the things that you really need to do that are the right thing for you to do that then allow you to break through the thing that's holding you back from really being able to have more bandwidth, to have more energy, to be able to do more, to be able to achieve more, to be that person who operates at an exceptional level in everything that you do. The other area that we also need to start looking at is the conversation around dysregulation. This is a conversation that is happening a lot more because people are starting to hear it and understand that your nervous system and nervous system dysregulation is a thing, right? And it is a thing that we are living very intimately with. You are starting to hear about it in your parenting. Like when you get dysregulated as a parent, it's not usually because of your kid, it's usually because of your own triggers and the way that you were treated as a kid and things that you haven't looked at yet, which is why when your kid does it, it's so triggering. The worst mirror, the best and the worst, right? It's like when you realize it's not them, it's you. That is, so this is where this conversation is starting to come up more. This is also where people have the most energy leaks, because the more that your nervous system is in a state of fight or flight, in survival mode, in this is unsafe, the more calories it takes, the more energy it takes, the more things you burn, right? There's so much more of a need to be able to maintain that state. And I know that people have heard this a lot, but like when you live in a chronic state of stress, that's the system that's on board all of the time. It's also where this is the thing that people need to start. This is the perspective shift, the like the way you see it, the way I see it, that needs to shift here is that the reason for so many chronic symptoms in the body is not because there's like it's not necessarily because there's a whole lot of issues with like lack of nutrients or not eating the right things or any of a lot of the other stuff that people have these super 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 long lists of everything that they do for their health. Where the real issue is here is that the when the nervous system is in fight or flight and there is chronic stress, it's going to, number one, drive up inflammation. Number two, you're going to need a heck of a lot more nutrients in order to keep all of those systems on board going at 100% all of the time, right? And eventually it's just going to burn out the system. So the organ systems are going to start showing warning signs, right? Of like, hey, we've got a problem here. Hey, we've got a problem here. Hey, we've got a problem here because we can't sustain this for much longer. And people get stuck in these chronic states of stress, not because of the actual problem itself, right? It's the stories that are going on behind why the stressor is a trigger in the first place. So, in this sense, again, it is you, right? It is what are you say, like, what are the stories that are going on in your mind about the thing that is happening that is making this a chronic stressor for you? And the key here is to start looking for where those energy leaks are. Where are these stored negative emotions? Where are these mental stories that are going on in your mind, creating massive energy leaks that are draining you so you can't show up at 100% in other areas, right? Like in that sense, the capability thing that you are like, I can't do this, I can't uphold this, I can't continue with this, I can't do this. Yeah, you can't because there's so much energy going into all of these other places that it would be very hard to maintain. That is a survival mechanism. That is your body telling you we can't continue on like this. And if you continue to ignore it, we will eventually break down, which is where all of these like chronic illnesses come from, right? Is from constant ignoring of these things that were learned. And it is your brain and body forcing you to finally start listening. It's a hard lesson to learn, I know. But that is such a key place to start looking. An example of this is like having a really, really big meeting on your calendar, right? And you are literally stressing about it all day long. That is an energy leak. Another way that I really like to look, a metaphor for this is that like I like to look at like the stored negative emotions, these like limiting decisions and beliefs that we learn about ourselves as we grow up and create like our model of the world, the way that we see it is that they are kind of like tabs on a computer. And you know how when you have too many windows and tabs open, like your computer just starts to run like slower and slower and slower and like the it just doesn't have the capacity, the bandwidth, right, to be able to operate and to keep up with all of this memory. When you start closing those tabs, guess what happens, right? You get more energy. You get more space. And so the reason why I say this and why this is probably the most important part of this entire video and episode is that people look at like, and this is what everybody will sell you and tell you to do, right? Which is like to clear your calendar, clear your schedule, to do less, to offload, create systems, make sure other like outsource, right? Have other people doing all of these things. It's not necessarily that any of that is wrong advice, but it is from where it is coming from that is the missing piece, right? Like I tell people to outsource. I tell people to, hire people. I tell people to find more time and space for stillness and for rest and to slow down and find areas where on your schedule, if there are things that you don't need to be doing right now, like let's let go of those, right? I'm all here for those things. But what is missing is the stories that are going on behind all of it, that we are constantly focusing on the external world of like, what can I control in the external, that then neglects the stories that are happening underneath that are driving the behavior in the first place. The reason why that's so important, right, is that if we continue to keep focusing on the external, we miss what's happening on the internal. This is literally healing from the inside out. This is also, in my opinion, where people kind of miss it when it also comes to the health thing as well. I know that, like, technically the organ systems in your body are like in your body, like they are part of the inner world. But I almost look at them sometimes as like a reflection, like an external reflection of what's going on in like the inner mind, right? The inner like subconscious world. What is your brain telling your body to create? So in that sense, in the external, even though it's like inside your body. It's a perspective shift that I make when it comes to the physical body, that I always start asking like, okay, if this client has autoimmune disease, for example, what is their subconscious mind believing and doing that is that then that is the outcome that it is producing. Hopefully that makes sense. But this is what I'm talking about here, that are the energy leaks. And what is always so amazing, like my clients will constantly come back to me and be like, this was wild. All we did was shift a belief and let go of an emotion. And like it just opens up so much energy for them. It opens up so much space. It opens up so much more capacity, because what we did was we started closing tabs, right? And we started inputting in a different input that doesn't require so much to hold and to run. Kind of like the monkey on your back or like the baggage that you carry. It's like literally trading out the like baggage for maybe like a balloon. So then you could just like float or move forward faster. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how that metaphor really works very well. But the point being, though, that you are literally closing tabs so that you now gain back more space. So literally you gain back more capacity. Not a whole lot shifted in the external world. What shifted was what was being held in the internal world and the energy leaks that were happening there. That is what allowed for the external space to also shift, because now you're creating something different and you're picking up different toothpicks from your environment. But also we're not running this energy leak constantly on the inside. So this is where like people are like, Okay, but like I want to do more like nutrition stuff. I want to take more supplements. Tell me what to do, in that sense. Do I need to not do CrossFit? Do I need to start walking? Do I need to do yoga? Do I need to like, shift all of that? What do I do in that? Do I need to sleep better? I have insomnia. I'm gaining weight. I'm like doing all these things. The number one thing that I keep bringing people back to is this concept, is that you in the sense that we keep wanting to do more to achieve more, that in and of itself is the pattern that is the problem. Not that it is bad to want to do more and to achieve more. Like I'm right there with you. I have massive goals and things that I constantly am doing, and I have my hands in a lot of things. And It is the it is what your body is feeling safe in and doing, the environment with which you have created to help you heal and to feel safe, that is the real thing at question here, not necessarily doing more. It's not necessary. It can be about some of the testing, and I talk about that in my breakthrough course, is like the different testing that you can use to look at your mitochondria, to look at your adrenals, to look at your hormones, to look at your mineral levels, right? Because minerals are a massive foundation for energy and for health and wellness. I give you examples of things you can do for your gut, all of which you can order like quite literally on your own. There are so many options and things and tools that you can use to like not guess, right? So you can really see what is actually going on internally. And at the same time, I have had so many clients in my one-to-one practice move the needle just from looking at what the subconscious mind is doing, because it opens up so much more energy and it takes out so much of these energy leaks, and it helps the nervous system start creating safety in your body and in your environment so that you can heal. That's it, right? So that's the simple answer right there. That's all of it broken down into one very, very simple answer, is that. But if you're still like, okay, but like also what can I do? Because I get it. There are some things that you can do to help improve performance, improve energy, and to, have more bandwidth and be able to really show up at 100%. Some of those things, if we're like looking at nutrition, we want to make sure that from like a mineral standpoint, we're talking about that we don't have copper toxicity. Here, we're also talking about making sure you have enough magnesium, but just taking magnesium doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to fix the problem, because if your system, if your body and your adrenals are running on a lot of stress and getting fatigued and burned out, they will actually take magnesium and send it out of the body, which is why it'll show up on a tissue analysis, is because the body will literally try to send it out of the body versus use it. Okay. There's also calcium. There can be calcium shells that prevent thyroid hormone from getting into your cells. It's another reason why some people feel really fatigued, but they have normal thyroid panels. Things like your balance between sodium, potassium, and magnesium, so your electrolytes, right? Those things are really important, and they need to be at optimal levels, because your sodium, potassium, uh, there are proteins in between on cells that are constantly moving sodium and potassium out of the cell. If you took biology, you'll know what I'm talking about here. But basically, like, we have to have that, and that has to be operating well in order for us to bring water into the cell, right? To stay hydrated. And even though they don't have like specific impacts on energy, so like how your body creates ATP and adenosine triphosphate, which is what your mitochondria make in order for you to have energy. Like, it doesn't necessarily impact that system, but they still have a lot of they still play a lot of roles in helping you have energy. Okay. So the other then thing in that is, I talked about the mitochondria. Your mitochondria are extremely important for creating energy. They need things like CoQ10. So if you're deficient in CoQ10, we might have an issue there, right? We need enough magnesium, because magnesium acts like a dishwasher. So it really helps to clean out the mitochondria. And one of the things they can be really It can be a really big issue for people is if their mitochondria are getting bogged down, so they're getting like toxic and like icky and sludgy and yucky. So creating good clean energy is why you feel so sluggish and icky and gross and just kind of like ugh. And brain fog, a really good example of this. So having enough magnesium to be able to clean those out, pretty important. Making sure that they also have enough of the other nutrients that they need in order to do their job, which is a very wide range of different vitamins and minerals, also really important. Another thing that is also important here is managing your blood sugar. Because if, let's say, you're cutting out sugar, but then you're skipping meals because you're not eating, that's going to drive up cortisol. And so stress hormone goes up, and then now we still have a chronic state of stress, which may not be from like a family member causing more drama and yelling at you. It's actually internal stress that's driving up the problem, right? So these are all different things that you can be looking at and doing to help promote, better energy and to having more bandwidth, making sure that you're sleeping well. All of those things are really, really important. But I would say here that the more common reasons why people aren't sleeping well, they have insomnia, that they are gaining weight and they are fatigued and, experiencing a lot of these other symptoms isn't necessarily because they need to take more melatonin or to make sure that they are, using their blue light blocker glasses and getting up at sunrise to make sure that they get the sun on their eyes and getting outside at sunset to make their the same thing. Um, can all of those things be helpful? Sure. Yeah, we have plenty of science to say that those are the things that, and I do sometimes recommend doing those things. We even did that for my daughter when she was born. We got her outside at the beginning of the day and then got her outside at the end of the day so she could start regulating her circadian rhythms. Yeah, like all of those things are important and they can be a part of a solid routine. But what I think happens is that we put so much weight on all of these things that you need to do that it becomes literally so hard to do all of the things. And then it starts to become this like, I'm doing all of the right things, but none of it is working, or it's only working to a certain point. And then I like, what else is wrong with me that the needle isn't moving? Which is a question that people will go to, especially if you're a high performer and a high achiever. Because the reason why you have that pattern in the first place is usually because at some point in time you believed in some capacity that you weren't enough and that you weren't doing enough. And so you had to perform at a certain level in order to know that you are enough. It's how you gain your value and worth and love and all of those things. So it's literally how some needs are met. It was just a pattern that was learned when you were a kid. So in some senses, it is about doing the things, but in order to actually sleep well and for your food to be absorbed and to bring in the proper nutrients and to make sure that your adrenals are actually able to use the things that you are bringing in, you've also got to regulate your nervous system. You need to be able to get into the parasympathetic nervous system state that is the one that is not in freeze or fawn, depressed, burned out side of things. We also need to make sure that you're not in the fight or flight sympathetic mode, but that you're spending a decent amount of your time in the rest, digest, creative part of your nervous system. And that can be really hard to access when you are someone who is a doer and a constantly on the go person who really struggles, sees it as a failure, or you get really guilty when you are not doing, performing, achieving, accomplishing. If the house is a mess and you're sitting down and watching TV, how do you usually feel? That'll give you a pretty good standpoint of if where your beliefs are. I think the fear that people have when I start saying things like that is that then if things shift and they become more regulated, let's say, and they are able to access that parasympathetic nervous system more easily, then they'll become lazy, meaning that the house will never get cleaned. things will never get done, that they won't perform at their best. The thing that happens though is it's the opposite, right? It is literally the reason why you know that you are capable of more, but you just can't seem to access it. It's a bandwidth conversation that requires a certain level of recovery in order for you to be able to fully reach that full capacity. Good example, especially if there's some athletes here. You know how people will say, like, let's say you're training. A really good example of this, and I can say it from my own personal perspective, is there was a time at CrossFit long time ago that I was like lifting and lifting and lifting and lifting, and I was really, really trying to get, I think it was like well, there were a couple of times that this happened, but let's say for this example, it was a 95-pound snatch. I was like really, really close to being able to get it, but I just every single time I wasn't able to do it. And I was doing all of the, cycles and all that stuff. I went on a vacation, didn't do anything, like no training at all. I got back and I hit it as if it was butter. So easy. And I was like, what? I didn't have the knowledge that I have now. And it occurred to me finally, that vacations, rest, help you to recover, which means you adapt. And with everything, Usain Bolt said this also. He said the reason he was so successful was because he trained and then he spent the rest of the time recovering. So you must have this balance. You must have this balance. It's not just in your training and your workouts, but it's literally in life. Call it balance, call it whatever you want, but it is literally the relationship between driving, working, doing, and resting, allowing for your body to recover, allowing for your body to adapt. Also, another thing on this is because if you are a high achiever, you probably have in some capacity, or a high performer in some capacity, you need to be creative. Maybe you write, maybe you have all of these different roles that you play. Maybe you are a business owner. So if you are, doing a lot of, creative things, needing to produce content, whatever, creativity comes from the parasympathetic nervous system. And if you have ever been the kind of person that like you've been in the shower and you get like your best ideas there, or like you're driving to work or you're driving and like you get the best idea, what's happening is that those are the areas where your nervous system usually drops into a rest, digest, like parasympathetic nervous system state. It is a place of safety, of calm. And the reason why those things come through is because all of the other mental chatter goes away for a time being. So when people talk about like mental energy leaks, where you'll like go and the opposite of this is doing like feeling the need to scroll and getting distracted, or just like watching Netflix, just turning your brain off to like numb yourself. That's the way that a lot of people learn how to turn their brain off when they're very like mentally heavy people. They live in the mental space, which is me. So you learn these kind of, well, you just learn ways, right, to like turn your brain off, which is usually this like need to scroll or distract or just like, zone out, right? If you can learn how to literally be still. So it is not meditating while running or washing the dishes or doing any of those things. It is physical stillness that then also allows the brain to quiet. It won't necessarily turn all the way off, right? But like to quiet the mind so that you can drop into the body. That stillness, when you can own that space, that's where the creativity really comes from. That's the parasympathetic nervous system coming on board. That's when you can, download things that like this episode here today, right? This is what I'm talking about. Now, I went way deeper on this than I usually would, but the whole entire point of this is that if you are noticing that you are really wanting more energy and you are wanting to, that you are capable of more, and bandwidth is the thing in question, literally having the capability or capacity to be able to do and hold the things that you are, most of the time there are other stories and other things that are happening underneath the surface that are the reason why you're feeling that way. Yes, people can be holding a lot, and I am not saying that this is the thing then to have people doing even more, right? Shared load in the house, all of those things are important. Um, so I'm not saying that this is the way that we like gaslight women and then we put more on them and more mental load and on people in general, right? That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying here is that looking at those deeper layers, looking at the areas of dysregulation, looking at the mental stories, looking at the stored negative emotions, looking deeper at the indicators, the symptoms as indicators, not as problems, will give you so much more insight to then be able to break through the reason why you know that you are capable of doing and achieving so much, but you are just not knowing what, like, why it's not happening. Especially too if you're dealing with like thyroid issues, if you're dealing with any sort of like autoimmune disease that is leading to that, the reason why you're feeling fatigued, brain fog, postnatal depletion, reasons why this, these really tough states of like fatigue and energy deficits really come up, or just being in a chronically high stress state all of the time and just feeling super, super drained at the end of the day. Mom momming all day long, right? I'm like dealing with little kids. It's pretty high energy, high intensity state. Um, but it is a lot the like stories, and then are your needs being met? Are your wants being met? Do you even know what your needs and wants are, right? These are all a part of the conversation that happens when we start looking a whole lot deeper at why you feel the way that you do. So I think that's where we're going to end this episode. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that it has given you some perspective shifts and things to really think about, and different ways to think about what it is that's actually going on, and things that you can also do to start having more energy. These are the energy hacks, right, that I think people very much so overlook and bypass, but they are the ones that move the needle the most. So, I mentioned a couple things. I have the breakthrough workshop that is available. The link will be down below to grab that if you are interested. And then I also have limited one-to-one coaching spots if diving into some of these stories and things really resonates and is something that you want to move forward with. I don't take on that many people, but it is an option, and it is available if that is something that you are interested in. Okay. Well, thank you so much for listening and for being here, and I will see you next time for the next episode. Take care.